Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 12th, 2026 meeting of the Town of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. I am the chairman, Christopher Lozon. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, any member of the public is welcome to record the meeting as long as they make themselves known. Is there any member of the public recording this meeting? Seeing none, it is being recorded by the town and will be available after the meeting as well. Jeremy, can you call the roll?
Certainly. Chris King, Chris Lauzon,
Here.
Remus Pascorius,
Here.
Jim Sproul,
Present.
Frank Ward,
Here.
Lillian Wu,
Here.
and I am here.
Okay, great. We've got quite a few people here. I'm not sure if any of them are members of the public or just for our discussions later. Are there any members of the public who'd like to make comment? Hearing none. Move on to the approval of the minutes from our December 15th, 2025 meeting. Would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I think there was one small nit in the minutes. Let me see if I can find my notes real quick. I believe in when we were talking about the revenues on page 3, that there was a reference to there's a reference that should have probably been taxes as opposed to revenues. Let me see if I can find it. I didn't mark it up. When I was reading it, I noticed it was. Apologies for not having marked it up.
Quite all right.
Okay, so it's where we say approximately, it's the third line on the second page. This is the largest property source. I believe we're trying to say this is the largest revenue source.
Is that accurate, Mark?
Good line, you said.
So it's on page 3, third line, approximately 7% or more of the general fund, blah, blah, blah. And then the next line, this is the largest property source.
Yes, okay. Yes,
I
we'll
think
make
it's the
that
largest
change.
revenue source, correct?
Revenue source, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Any other changes? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote to approve, Jeremy?
Certainly. Chris Lauzon,
Abstain.
Remus Pascorius,
Approve as amended.
Jim Sproul,
Yes.
Frank Ward,
Yes.
Lillian Wu,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
All right, great. Moving right along, we'll get to review of Public Works fiscal 27 capital project requests. So we have Director Santos here. Do you want to do kind of a brief overview of some of the major things, or?
Good evening, Dan Santos, Director of Public Works. What I thought we would do is have the supervisors of the 3 enterprise accounts go through their programs. They're generally just a few projects in brief. And then using the form that was submitted with the agenda, go through the priority public works projects, which basically appear on the first page, and they will be presented by Griffin Bowden and Mark Marinaccio. So that sounds okay. I'll ask Hans to brief you on his capital program for 2027 and beyond.
Yes, please.
Good evening, Hans Kaiser, Water Supply Division. Our capital programs deal with the design for the new wells. We're looking at in 2030, $5 million for that work. It's basically, we're looking pretty far away but it's always good to plan, I guess. The second priority is the master plan update, $250,000. We're asking for fiscal year 2027. The master plan we were working for right now was done in 2007, so it's about 20 years, and it's about time to update that. Part of this master planning effort also deals with hydraulic modeling, make sure our fire flows and water quality all through the system is consistent and appropriate. Number 3 is the future construction monies for the Mary Dunn treatment plant. We need to update that plant to deal with iron and manganese problems. We have most of the activated carbon filters for our PFAS contamination inside, but there's still 2 units that are outside that deal with the airport well. And we would need to really be able to have that ability to use that airport well in the wintertime too. So that would need a housing around those filters. Next one is our recurring program pipe replacement, $1.5 million for fiscal year 27. That is basically funding for pipe replacement. We have a recurring program doing that. This year is going to be the last year that we're asking for monies to work in conjunction with the Longview Drive area sewer expansion, so that at the same time we were digging to put in sewer, we also replace water mains in that area. That most of those are 1950s, 1960s AC pipe, which is close to the end of its life and need to be replaced. We have the water service line inventory for $2 million for fiscal year 27. That is a pretty important and also a regulatory requirement to finish our lead service line inventory for the Hyannis water system. This is a requirement from the EPA and Mass DEP. We still have a couple of thousand water service lines that we really don't know if they're lead, if they're galvanized, if they're copper, if they're plastic, and we have to make a definitive assessment on what that material is, and this monies would take care of that. The last one is the $200,000 appropriation. That's also a recurring program that we use to upgrade all our well buildings, treatment plants, facilities. We're dealing with replacement of roofs, doors, windows. We're dealing with security systems, SCADA, pumps, and chemical transmission, and everything that's necessary for to run a water system this size. So for fiscal year 27, we're looking at 3.95 million in capital funding as an ask. Any questions?
I have one, Hans. What
Sure.
is the estimated cost of the Mary Dunn treatment plant?
We're looking at probably around 50 million, no, $55 million.
Thank you. When do you anticipate that will begin?
Probably we're looking at fiscal year 2030, maybe fiscal year 2031, somewhere in that time frame.
Thank you.
For my own edification, Hans, What's the service area that is being covered under your enterprise?
It's Hyannisport, and West Hyannisport.
Right.
There's a few streets in Centerville that we service just north of Pitcher's Way, like opposite of where the police station is, that area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same as the case in with the COMM water system. They service a few streets more towards the West Hyannisport area, just because the way the rivers, the streams are, and the way the piping is, it just made sense to do it that way. So, but on average, or in general, we do service the Hyannis Fire District area.
Okay. And then the other fire districts cover their own service areas.
That's correct, except West Barnstable.
And who's covering West Barnstable?
Nobody. They are pretty
Wells.
much on private wells. There are a couple of
Okay.
areas that are serviced by COMM in the south part of that district, and the Barnstable Village Water Department service a few streets on the east side. But in general, it's all
It's private.
private well.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You mentioned some money for exploring possible lead pipes that need to be replaced. Is that just because they're not documented what those pipes are, or because of age, or what's the
They're not
situation?
they're not documented.
Okay.
It's basically all a long-term fallout from the huge issue with lead in Flint, Michigan,
Yep.
and the realization that the water service industry is we need more effort and information about what is the material of all our water service lines going into all the buildings and all the residences. And we have reasonable records, but they are not complete. And the federal requirement and the state requirement is that they have to be complete.
Okay. Does that involve digging up to
Yes.
physically look at the? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we have been trying to avoid that because it's so expensive to do that. Um, we have sent out mailings, we have knocked on doors, we have done phone calls, tried to give people incentives. Um, it's very difficult a lot of people have, understandably, a aversion to strangers coming into the house and looking into the basement. We do the best we can, but there's times when we actually just can't get in and we need to do what we got to do.
Okay. Is that primarily residential or commercial? Do you know?
It is both.
Yeah. Okay.
It is both.
All right.
Okay.
So essentially, we have to, the town is funding about $2 million because people won't open their doors, which is, I guess, too bad for the town.
It's part of it. The other part of it is that there is a distinction. If you can imagine a water main in the street, and from that there is smaller water service lines going into people's properties. There's a piece of that water line that is public, and there's a piece of that that's private. And most of the time we have a shut-off valve. It's called the curb stop, which is right on the property line. And sometimes there's a difference of material between the private side and the public side. With that there is also a whole can of worms that we're working through about ownership, because the private side is owned by the property owner. The federal government loves for us to replace that, because then the problem goes away. Big picture, the problem is legally there's issues. There's a whole bunch of policy issues we still need to work through. But first of all, the first chunk of work that needs to happen is we need to know what we got. So we need accurate data. And this $2 million, what we'll do with that is we'll basically vacuum excavate right at that curb stop, right at the property line. And in that way, we can determine the material on both sides with one excavation. It's not a wonderful thing. It's basically the least worst way of determining what we need to do.
So the $2 million is that determination, and then you obviously don't know how many pipes must be replaced. So then there would be a later ask for replacement costs.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, you're doing what needs to be done. So thank you for doing it.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Hans?
If I may, these are requests from an enterprise fund. They're not listed on that 3-page document that was sent to us at all, correct? So they're not in that 3 pages of priorities from the task force. They're outside of that.
That's correct, Frank. The task force summary that we sent you is all general fund projects and enterprise fund projects requesting general fund assistance. The Water Enterprise Fund pays for all its own capital. They raise the money to do this through the rates and charges that we set through that enterprise operation. So they're on their own funding source.
Is there a document that summarizes these requests versus?
Yeah, there is.
Yes. Has it been sent? Did I just miss that?
I'll go back and see. If we didn't send it, we'll send it again.
Thank you.
We'll do all the enterprise funds that you didn't get if you didn't get them.
Thank you.
So Mark, you were saying that it's remind me of the years. In about 3 years, we're going to get to the point where we're going to stop having kind of a large CIP funding mode until we rebuild that money source. This is not dependent upon the normal CIP funding. So when he's saying 2030, that's something that's reasonable that we can say is not going to be
that's
dependent
within
upon
the enterprise fund operation itself. They're not going to be competing with the general fund projects for financing. So they have their own funding source. So
Right.
and that's through the rates and charges that we charge for the water users.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that makes sense, right? Otherwise, you're discriminating against the other fire districts who have their own water service companies and are paying for their capital expenditures through the fire district overlay tax on the real estate tax bill.
Okay, I think we'll move on to our water pollution control enterprise account. That supervisor and manager is Andy Boulay.
Good evening, Andrew Boulay, Water Pollution Control Division Supervisor. So I've got 5 projects that are on the capital plan for FY27. I'll go through them in priority order. The number 1 priority is our pump station rehabilitation program. This is I think it's year 7 of this program we've been going through. We've got 30 town-owned sewage pump stations in town, and we've been rehabilitating them based on condition capacity. And in this case, the 4 stations that we're rehabilitating here, there's a focus on coastal resiliency as well. These are all 3 of the stations are located on Ocean Street or just off of Ocean Street, and the 3rd is off of SD Ave. Ocean Street, Bayshore Road, and Gosnold pump stations were built in 1968, and they've reached the end of their design life and are in need of some rehabilitation. Ocean and Bayshore are being rehabilitated, and Gosnold is slated to be replaced. It's a small submersible pump station. And the 4th one on SD Ave, this one kind of advanced up the priority chain pretty quickly. Due to some pump components that we can no longer get our hands on just due to the age of the system, and actually rehabilitating the pump station will basically, it's very hard to do in the footprint that it's currently sitting in. The pumps sit in a chamber 20 feet below grade, and the access tube is just about as big as you can fit a human being in. So we're going to need to take the top off the pump station. And if we're getting to that point. We're actually going to convert it to a submersible pump station in the process. So that's the number one priority on water pollution control. Number two priority is completion of the design of a new sewer force main coming from downtown Hyannis. There are two mains that are coming from Hyannis. One is 90 years old and the other is 70 years old. So this project will complete the design of a new force main that will serve downtown Hyannis and essentially extend the life of the pumping systems down there, or at least the pipes that serve them, by another 50 to 100 years. Third project is pretty simple. It's a tractor replacement. We had this slated for fiscal year 27 already, and unfortunately the engine on the tractor died a few months ago. So it did us pretty good. We had it for 19 years, but this is the tractor that we use to move heavy equipment around the facility, to clear snow, and to rake our effluent sand beds. The fourth project is a new pickup truck. We've got a growing staff and need for more vehicles. So this is just your generic 3/4 ton pickup with plow attachments. And then the final one is it's the completion of a design. Might seem counterintuitive to design a demolition, but we're looking to really assess for hazardous materials and some of so this is for the 91 South Street pump station. So I mentioned a 90-year-old force main earlier. This is the building that it used to pump from before it was repurposed. Right down on 91 South Street. The building is in disrepair. It is not used for anything. And it's become a little bit of a maintenance headache for our staff, and it's showing signs of severe deterioration. So we're looking to do a design for the demo of it. And again, the design would look into the hazardous materials abatement requirements of this building, as well as all the interconnected pipe work that there are still connections into the sewer system at this location. So it's really to think through the demolition aspect of this. We're asking for $50,000 for that. Happy to take any questions on any of these projects.
Andrew, what is the total of all of these CIP projects?
The total of all of them together is 6.175. So I should have gone through these. The pump station rehabilitation is 5.6 million. The downtown force main replacement design, we're asking for 325,000. The Kubota tractor and the new truck are both at $100,000 a piece. And the 91 South Street pump station demolition design is $50,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Said
Andrew,
1 South Street is no longer used for anything. Is there a plan for that property once it's demoed?
There is not, and this one's been hanging out there for a while because we were actually looking at ways that we could reuse the building, potentially for auxiliary pumping capacity. And what we ended up finding is that use just wasn't there. So as far as future use, I think once it's demolished, I think that's really up to the town what to do with the property. I don't really have an answer. I've got ideas. It could be green space. It could be sold. It could be leased. It's really I would pass that along to town leadership to make the decisions on that.
Okay, but your thought is that property serves no purpose for your division at this point?
That's correct. Yeah, we've assessed that.
Okay, thank you.
And Chris, if I may, these are all projects that relate to the existing water pollution control facility operations. So separate and distinct from the expansion of the public sewer system under the comprehensive wastewater management program.
Mm-hmm.
So these projects are all funded through rates and charges that we assess users that are connected to the system. So I just wanted to make that distinction between those the projects you just heard and the ones that you'll hear in a few minutes regarding what's being requested for the next round of projects under our comprehensive wastewater management plan.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
And just one other follow-up on that is, so if you were to sell that asset, those proceeds would go back to the enterprise fund itself?
That's correct.
With your resiliency in coastal areas, certainly the specter of rising seas, I imagine, is something that you're trying to avoid failures because of. Are there areas that you are worried about long term, even with these rehabilitations and resiliency projects?
Yeah, part of our pump station evaluation effort back in 2019 looked at flood mapping and where all these lie. We've already moved one pump station outside of a flood zone up in Barnstable Village off of Rendezvous Lane. And then, these ones, we have seen flooding coming up to the bases of the station, and during the right storm wave action and what have you, we could definitely see some of the electrical components become flooded. So with some of these projects, we're raising the electrical components up above the floodplain to protect against that. And where that's not possible, we're putting in hardened flood-proof hatches, submarine hatches, if you will, to really harden them to prevent water coming in the event that the flooding happens. I don't know off the top of my head. I think there were about a dozen pump stations that are inside flood zones. And once we get through this, we'll have dealt with about half of them. So there are a few more to go after that as well.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions for Andrew? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Let's move on to our final enterprise account, and that is the solid waste division, head by Tracy Regazio.
Good evening, Tracy Regazio, Solid Waste Supervisor. I have two CIP projects here for you. The first being replacement of 3 of our compactor units that are at the MSW or the trash area of the facility. The compactor units are a vital piece of equipment for the collection of trash and recyclables. These units wear down over time and need to be replaced. We did perform some reline and repairs on the units back in 2020 to extend their useful life, but we are now closing in on end of life. We're getting the last that we can out of these motors. They were originally installed in 2001 timeframe. So we're looking at 25, 26 years on those electric motors, and really can't ask for too much more out of them. The second one is replacement of 2 container units, not the compactors now, the actual MSW container that hold the compacted household trash and recyclables for hauling and disposal. The current containers are nearing the end of their useful life, beginning to show wear and tear and deterioration. Trash is very corrosive, it's very abrasive. Steel does not hold up against it. We currently have 16 compactor boxes, which support the 8 compactor units that are owned by the town, and an additional 3 that are owned by the contractor. It's critical that we maintain a minimum of 2 containers per compactor unit so that we are able to keep one in service at all time. And we have to have enough to get us through the weekends because we can't haul any materials off-site on the weekends. And again, trash is very corrosive, very abrasive, and this stuff just doesn't hold up. The originals are the same age. They were 2001. We've been replacing. We did replace over the past couple of years. We have replaced a few of them, but we need to keep that process going. And I didn't say the price. I think we're looking at $150,000 for the compactor units for 3 of them, and another 50 or 55 for the container units. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions?
So was that 3 at 150 or 3 at 50 for a total of 150? Plus 55 for a total of what?
Each, it's three for 150,000 for the compactor units. And then,
Three for 150, so that's 3 times 50 equaling 150,
Yeah.
or
Correct.
three at 150 each.
no, 50, they're about
50
50 to
each.
55 each.
So your total request is roughly 200,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can you comment, Tracy, at all on revenues from the recyclables, et cetera, everything that you do there to generate revenues for the program?
The biggest thing with the recyclables that generates revenue is the metals. That is a commodity, right? So the market price is up and down. We do pretty well with that. I don't have the exact number. I'm not sure even what the
That's
price
quite all
is.
right. That's fine.
It's in terms of recycling, that's where the major revenue comes from. It's a cost for pretty much everything else, and the cost varies. We pay a little less to get rid of the cardboard. Everything else is generated through the permit fees and per visit fees for the MSW disposal and recycling disposal.
And how's the new digital ID program been working with just the license plates? Have the technology been good for you?
Yes, very, very good. It's constantly getting upgraded. They make improvements all the time in terms of reporting, and been a great company to work with. They check in on us all the time. It's really accurate. We're getting good reads.
Okay.
Very happy with it. Very happy.
Tracy,
Say
as a
somebody that
user of
uses
that,
it every
I'm happy
week.
you had it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That was two. Can't hear you.
But as somebody who uses your facility a couple of times a week, it's very well run. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you. That's very nice to hear.
It's very convenient to have that plate reader. It makes it so much simpler to go to your facility.
Yeah, that was a big improvement. Very, like I said, and they're constantly tweaking it and tuning it, and it's getting better all the time. They just added a whole bunch of reports that we can pull out of it now. Um, Busiest time of day, busiest day of the week, all that kind of stuff. Repeat vehicles. It's pretty impressive.
You say repeat vehicles? Uh-oh.
Yeah, we can tell how many times you come in
Okay.
So he can
and
tell
what time.
if somebody has a side business of trash hauling, he can find you.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh.
it'll know. We'll know right away. Not right away, but we'll know.
thank you.
Any other questions on solid waste? No? All right. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay, the gentlemen who've already spoken, you can sign off. And now remaining will be the public works projects, including the CWMP projects. And I think the first one kicks off with Griffin Bowden, #1 priority project for DPW.
Yes, thank you, Dan. Griffin Bowden, town engineer. If I may, I'm going to share my screen. Mark, can I get the ability to do that? Thank you. Everybody seeing this map? Yes.
There you go.
Right,
Thank you.
All right. Our first project this evening is the Long Pond Area Sewer Expansion Project. The areas shown on the map are the parcels that will be connected as part of this project. There's 540 parcels. This project includes over 9 miles of sewer. There's been some minor additions to the project over the course of the years, just because certain areas make sense to incorporate into the project. South Main Street and over to the Centerville Elementary School off Bay Lane being the two most notable. The request for this project is $46.3 million. We submitted a project evaluation form this past year for consideration for SRF funding for this project. We anticipate hearing in the next couple of weeks. Usually at this time of year is when they release the draft intended use plan. So we're optimistic that this project will be eligible for that financing, and should know that shortly. Any questions on this project?
And I might add, if it does get chosen as eligibility for SRF funding, it'll also make it eligible for Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Griffin, when will these folks actually have sewer?
We're anticipating completion of the project in 2031. However, as you see, there's a number of roads throughout the project. So there may be roads that are done as soon as 2028 and eligible to hook up at that point. We have tried to do some partial releases of sewers when it makes sense. And I think in this case, it may make sense to get people the ability to hook up once the pipes are in the ground, as opposed to waiting for the whole project to be completed, where we could be working, frankly, on the other side of, quite a ways away. And they're just they would otherwise be waiting just for those roads to be completed. So I think that's what we'll be hopefully trying to coordinate. But the project will be completed in 2031.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, our next priority project is also a CWMP project. This is the preliminary design for what we titled the Osterville Woods Sewer Expansion Project. This is a residential neighborhood out in Osterville, kind of bound by Route 28 to the north, Osterville West Barnstable Road to the west, Bumps River Road to the south. There is approximately 250 properties within this residential area that will be connected to sewer, about 3.75 miles of sewer to be installed as part of this project. The request for this year, again, is for preliminary design, survey and preliminary design. That's our first step in planning these projects. The request is for $450,000 for that effort.
Griffin, is there a graphic for this one, or?
There is. Did it not change?
No, it's Long Pond.
Oh. Sorry about that. There now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Apologies. So this is the area in question. There is a portion of this project which is currently a portion of this area currently under construction. Route 28 West Sewer Expansion Project expands sewer down Route 28 in this general area. It also includes Osterville West Barnstable Road and Bumps River Road, as well as Oldham Road and Old East Osterville Road, as that was the way we had to route the force mains in order to install our sewer pump station for that project. So there is a chunk of this kind of out, and if you're asking yourself why, that's why that is like that. This will kind of fill in the remainder of the neighborhood. Any further questions? All right, I don't have a graphic for that.
Is it odd to anyone that this was your number 5 priority as a department, but it became number 2 from the group? Did someone lobby to try to bring it up the ladder?
I can speak for myself. During the workshop, there was no lobbying for this particular project. I think this just happened to score in this manner. So I can't speak for the folks that ranked the project and why they ranked this one perhaps higher than other ones, but there was certainly no lobbying or anything.
I guess it's only a half a point, but it just seems odd that the group thought it was a higher priority than the department did. I guess it's just math.
I'm going to move to the next project that's on the list. It's actually moving out of CWMP world and back into our DPW general fund projects. This project is our annual request for public roads maintenance. The request this year is for $3.95 million. This is our project that we do annually to resurface our roadways. We also do about $1 million of drainage improvements through this program each year. and there are some administrative costs incorporated in this project for oversight. Our main goal here with this program is to provide continuous improvements of our roadways and maintain a high ranking of our road safety, road scoring ranking. We've traditionally, with this funding, been able to maintain an average of a B minus, C plus, so to speak, with our road network. And so we continue to maintain this program in order to provide good roadways within the community. Any questions?
Griffin, do you have a list of the roads that you're targeting this year?
Yeah, so we do. It's quite a long list, actually. Westminster.
Okay.
It's in the data sheet, and actually, I have the data sheet. I can pull it up, but I could just go ahead and read it. Westminster Road in Centerville, Autumn Ave in Centerville, Bay Lane in Centerville, Goff Terrace in Marston's Mills, Reed Lane in Marston's Mills, Massachusetts Avenue in Hyannis, Kennedy Circle in Hyannis, Longwood Avenue in Hyannis, Circle Drive in Hyannis, Angel Road in Hyannis, Cumnor Street in Hyannis, St. John Street in Hyannis, Arbor Way in Hyannis, and Sylvan Drive in Hyannis. On top of that, we would typically do approximately 5 to 10 miles of chip sealing of roadways. But those would be those roads that I stated are roads that we would be doing mill and overlay typically for. We develop those lists based on our asset management program that we undertake every 3 years, which goes through and drives every mile, every length of our roadways in our network and scores them. And we use that data to inform where our lowest ranking roadways are and try to make sure we keep our network scoring high that way.
Griffin, how does the 3.95 compare to last year?
Yeah, so we have been increasing this request by $100,000 a year.
Okay.
So last year was 3.85. All right, if no further questions, we'll go back to CWMP land. I'll pull up a figure here. All right, our next project is our Huckins Neck sewer expansion project, and this is a request for final design. This request would be for the project area that you see here. It's kind of the area off Huckins Neck and down onto Lakeside Drive, Holly Point Road. That kind of is right out in the lake in between Burst Pond, Shallow Pond, and into Lake Wauquaket. There's about 140 properties within this project area. We're anticipating construction to begin in FY29. This will be building upon our Finney's Lane sewer expansion project, which is in the process of going out to bid here in the next couple of months and commencing construction in the fall. This request, excuse me, again is for final design. The request is $750,000. Any questions? Right. I will move on. Oops. Our next project is actually a new project this year. And actually it's something that Andy spoke about earlier with his downtown Hyannis force main improvement project. This is an opportunity to partner with that water pollution control effort to sewer a portion of the CWMP and hope to see savings in doing so. So the downtown Hyannis sewer expansion project proposes to install the new force main that Andy alluded to from downtown, down South Street and up Burse's Way to the water pollution control facility. This project would look to sewer areas along Burse's Way, which are identified in our CWMP were originally identified in phase 2, but it just makes sense to put that pipe in the ground while there'll be other pipe work going on in Burse's Way, so we're not having to rip up Burse's Way twice. In addition, there's some low-lying neighborhoods adjacent to this area that makes sense to try to pick up at this time. So this is the proposed project. This request is for design to be able to design this in conjunction with that downtown Hyannis sewer expansion project. The request is for $900,000 to design this effort. We would look to commence construction next fiscal year in partnership with that downtown Hyannis sewer expansion project. Any questions?
Funding for design, is that internal Griffin, are you doing contracting?
It'll be a
Consultancy?
combination. So it'll be a combination. So we've done our internal design. So we basically internally we'll do a schematic design, proof of concept, make sure we understand how in what directions the pipe will go, make sure the project will work as we contemplate, and then we will be retaining a consultant who's actually already under contract to start the downtown Hyannis sewer expansion project. We'll be adding this to their scope in order to get that designed in conjunction, and they'll complete the design.
Thank you.
Sir. All right, our next project is another CWMP project. This is our Prince Cove sewer expansion project. This project has actually been combined with another project that was previously identified in phase 1 in order to improve efficiency of implementation. We've been finding that it's significantly easier and more cost effective to combine projects where it makes sense. In this case, Prince Cove sewer expansion project originally was this area here. South County Road sewer expansion project was originally this area here. So now they've become one project. We're actually on the same timelines anyway. We frankly probably should have bolted them together from the beginning. So we made that change at this point. So this would include about 340 properties. This is a important project for our program in that it'll start removing a significant amount of nitrogen from the head ends of the 3 bays estuary, which is heavily impaired. This request is for final design. $2.25 million is the request for final design. Anticipate construction commencing in fiscal year 2029. Questions? All right, we'll stop sharing my screen. We don't need any more maps. All right, our next project is our public bridge maintenance and repairs program. This is a request for construction of the rehabilitation of the Centerville River Bridge and design of the rehabilitation of the Mill Creek Bridge. The Centerville River Bridge, we did an analysis of all the bridges in our inventory a couple of years back. This was identified as our second priority bridge, with the Oyster Harbors Bridge being the number 1 priority, which is currently in the process of commencing rehabilitation. There are some significant concrete repairs that are needed on this bridge. There's scour of the bridge abutments, and the railings need some work, and there's some sidewalk improvements that are necessary out here. So a fairly comprehensive rehabilitation needed for the Centerville River Bridge. This request this year is for $1.528 million to complete that task. Any questions?
Griffin, isn't this the controversial bridge that will carry windmill cables across it? And are we gearing up for that?
We are not. This is independent of that effort. There are actually so the project you're referring to actually is not proposing to put any cables on this bridge. It would actually go underneath the Centerville River if it does advance. So it doesn't actually touch the bridge. But this is being done completely independently as it's a need in order to maintain our bridge.
So it's not encased in concrete through the bridge. It's under the water?
That's correct. That is the proposal for that project.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the DPW's next priority project, the West Main Street at Pine Street and Barnstable High School intersection improvements project. This is a request for construction. I lost my spot here. This is a request for construction of a new traffic signal at the intersection of West Main Street and Pine Street, which is also the intersection of also where the driveway for Barnstable High School is. We'll be installing a new traffic signal as well as pedestrian signal equipment, pedestrian curb ramps, sidewalks in the area of work, new crosswalks, traffic signs, and pavement markings. We did an analysis a number of years back of this intersection, and it was warranted for a traffic signal to be installed here. There is a new development at the corner here, which also kind of exacerbates the need for this project. However, we had this in our programming well before that project was even proposed. This is a request for construction for $1.555 million in order to install this traffic signal at this location and improve safety of this intersection. Any question?
When do you think the project would be completed?
The project, the traffic signal project?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would look to go out to bid next fall or next summer after this funding becomes available, and likely would be completed. The target would be to complete it before Memorial Day. These types of projects, we certainly can get the curb work done. We can get out all the infrastructure in, but they do tend to get delayed with the infrastructure coming in. So the actual signals themselves tend to have a relatively long lead time, and they're frankly a lot of times kind of out of our control. So that would be our target, assuming we're able to get the equipment there in that time frame.
Great. Yeah, just as one that teaches there, I think there is a growing concern among both, even students are like, I don't want to get hit by a car as I'm going to Wendy's. So I don't know, that's a decent amount of time that if, Wendy's is opening this spring, there's going to be a lack of equipment there. So I don't know if we're all hoping that everything will be fine, but in the case that that becomes a bigger problem than the solution arrives, are there short-term solutions that might help?
There may be opportunities for short-term solutions, certainly at cost. There are the options of installing, say, flashing beacons for pedestrian crossings as a short-term measure, which are more readily available and easier to put in as the construction would be ongoing. If that becomes a problem, that's something that we would certainly be able to look into.
Yeah, I hope it isn't, but it is good to know that there's perhaps some avenues because
we'll certainly be keeping our eyes on it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge.
The afternoon traffic jam that happens every afternoon, it's not at Pine Street. It's at the other end by the gym when the bus comes out and blocks the road to let 27 buses come out. That problem's not going to be solved.
The Wendy's parking jam is going to be a significant hurdle of children crossing the street where there isn't a crosswalk. And that is, the traffic jam is one thing. This is going to be a pedestrian issue.
So this traffic signal is to protect the kids going to Wendy's, but it won't solve the afternoon traffic jam at the other end of the school park.
It's not because of Wendy's. The intersection's an issue, and they happen to also be solving that future solution. But
it's not necessarily intended to improve a traffic jam either. It's intended to make the intersection safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions on this project?
Yeah, can I ask a question? It's Betty.
Of course.
Just to that point about the traffic jam, I pick up my daughter every day at the school, and I know what he's talking about, the buses, but I think it's a positive thing. There's a police officer that stands in the road, and every single bus comes out. Are you going to be able to? Is the police officer? I guess the question is: are you designing this with the ability for the police officer to somehow interrupt these lights so that they continue to do that to get all of those buses out?
Yeah, so certainly the traffic signal will have an Opticom, which is the unit that allows for emergency vehicles when they have their sirens on to override the signals. So if they have their signals, their signals on, their hazards on, they should be able to make West Main Street go red during that time frame. And certainly that's something we will take a further look at.
Yeah, no, please, Griffin, please look at that because I understand the point about the traffic jam, but I'll take the traffic jam any day of the week to get those buses moving because they have another round they got to do with the elementary school after, so they got to go when they got to go. And It's very important that every single bus get out of there. And he's right. There's an enormous number of buses. So please consider that as you move forward. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Don't misunderstand my comment. I'm not against buses coming out. I'm very much in favor of the buses coming out. But I'd like to solve both problems. If the officer down at one end could stop the light, but he's going to capture cars between that exit in front of the donut shop. So there might be a way to solve both problems. That's only my point.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you for both bringing it up, and we'll certainly talk with the traffic unit as well over at BPD to see if there's some additional ideas as to how to improve that situation. All right, moving on to the next project. It's actually a project that Mark will be presenting, the Bismore Park Improvements Project.
Yeah, good evening, Mark Marinaccio, Town Architect. This project is for improvements to Bismore Park. The ask in FY27 is for design money. This originated with growth management, believe it or not, before it was planning and development. The walkway there is in really bad shape. It's a wood structure that's buried below grade. Structures and Grounds has been repairing it for years. It's at a point now where it can no longer be repaired. They have metal traffic signs screwed down to the surface, and handicap accessibility into some of the shanties is questionable. The shanties need to be replaced, and this is really design money to take a look at the whole site, to maybe even reconfigure the walkway to replace the shanties. The lot is below the floodplain, so there's issues there with floodplain and having structures on the site. So really, this is seed money to get that project going to replace all of that. Any questions about that?
How much is the request?
The request this year is for 280,000 with construction funding in the future request.
Thank you.
All right, back to me. Our next project is the Oyster Harbor's Bridge Improvements Phase 2 design. So this would be a $300,000 request for design services to design the next phase of rehabilitations which are needed at the Oyster Harbor's Bridge. As I alluded to earlier, we are currently under contract to start construction of Phase 1, the priority improvements that needed to be done. This would be a second phase of intermediate priority projects, the most significant of which would be repainting the bridge, which will help seal up a lot of the steel out there, which is vitally needed, as well as some various other concrete repairs and some repairs to the counterweight system, which is a critical component to the bridge. Any questions? All right, moving along to the next project. Our next project is the Curb Ramps and Sidewalks ADA Transition Plan. This is a request for $385,000. A number of years back, a couple of years back at this point, we prepared a curb ramps and sidewalk ADA transition plan to look at our public roadway network and the associated curb ramps and sidewalks, to evaluate which ones are not in compliance with the ADA, with the American with Disabilities Act. The plan presents a program to transition those curb ramps and sidewalks to accessibly into compliance. This would be a continuation of that program in order to improve sidewalks and curb ramps throughout the community to make sure we bring them into compliance. Any questions? All right. Our next project on the list is the Freshwater Ponds Monitoring and Management Plan program. This is a program we've had for about 6 years now at this point, to do a deep dive on an individual pond and develop a management plan to identify measures to properly manage a pond. The pond we've selected for this year's request is Crocker Pond in Marston's Mills, which is located kind of in between River Road and Santuit Newtown Road. The request for this year's pond is $155,000. Any questions?
Do we do the monitoring ourselves?
We do not for this program. So we do monitoring of all these ponds each year. We do spot monitoring. However, in the development of these management plans, we do very detailed monitoring, including getting like sediment borings. So we have divers go down and do sediment samples, as well as a much more robust sampling program. So we do retain the School for Marine Science Technologies at UMass Dartmouth for these programs.
Right. I remember that we used to use UMass Dartmouth
Yep.
when we did the entire pond survey. Thank you.
Yes.
Griffin, the results of the tests for the last 25 years have been that the ponds are deteriorating. Do we have any funding here to correct any situations such as runoff? Anything in the capital spending?
So there are no requests this year for any runoff improvements or the likes, Frank. What we do with these management plans is once we have developed the management plans and we have a recommendation that requires capital funding, we typically come to the council and present the findings of the plan and would have a supplemental request for whatever the management recommendations are at that time. In prior years, for instance, Shubal Pond, there was a recommendation for an alum treatment. So we presented the plan and then proceeded with the request for the alum treatment at that time.
The results of last year's, that there were no requests for any improvements?
No, there will be requests for improvements later in this year as we are finalizing the last 3 years of management plans now, actually.
Thank you.
The next project is the improvements to the fleet maintenance building. That building is located at the Highway Department, DPW Administration Building. It's a large metal building where they have offices and do repairs to the fleet. The building needs a number of furnaces to be replaced. It has some indirect heaters in the shop that need to be replaced, and there are holes burned into the metal roof from nesting birds over the years. Those need to be patched or replaced. We need to do a evaluation of that. Water's leaking into the structures, leaking into space during rainstorms. So that needs to be repaired relatively quickly.
What was the amount?
Sorry, the amount was where is it? 471,000 plus for that work.
Do we have a deferred maintenance plan on this? For this?
Well, I mean, Structures and Grounds has done maintenance to all of the buildings as they are ongoing. The roof condition is not something that they can just go up there and repair. The holes are pretty large, letting water in. So with this, we're also looking at bird deterrent up there. I'm not an expert in it now, but I guess I will be by the end of this project. So fleets of roaming cats. I'm not sure what we're going to do. Figure it out.
Thank you.
You, Mark. Our next project is the Hyannis West End Rotary improvements. This is a request for $150,000 to commence evaluation, survey, and preliminary design for improvements to the West End Rotary. Back in 2021, the Cape Cod Commission, at the request of the Department of Public Works, completed a road safety audit of the West End Rotary, which identified safety issues and potential improvements to address these issues. This project would fund the recommended improvements at the Rotary. This is a likely strong candidate for transportation improvement plan funding, so state funding provided by Mass DOT for roadway improvement projects. So it's advisable to commence the evaluation preliminary design in order to seek eligibility for that program. Any questions?
We've been talking about this West End Rotary for years.
Yep, I'd like to see this one move along.
We finally made it.
Yep, would be great. Our next request, if there are any other questions on the West End Rotary? Okay. Our next request similarly is a request for Barnstable Road and Center Street corridor improvements. This is also a request for evaluation, survey, and preliminary design. This is a request for $300,000 for that effort. This would be a kind of a facelift of Barnstable Road and Center Street. It would also include complete streets principles, include stormwater improvements, curbs, sidewalks, pedestrian bike accommodations, landscaping, lighting, ADA, and road reconstruction of Barnstable Road and Center Street. Given the proximity to Route 28 and Airport Road, it might be prudent to request transportation improvement project monies. We think this is likely a strong candidate for the TIP program, just like the last project. And as such, we think it's advisable to commence a preliminary design survey in order to seek eligibility for TIP funding for this eventual effort. Any questions?
Griffin, do we use many different firms for design? I mean, there's 15 different design projects here, millions of dollars. Does it all go to the same 2 or 3 firms, or how
No,
does that distribute?
no, we absolutely use multiple different firms. Um, we retain consultants a number of different ways. So we will issue RFPs for certain projects. Usually, our larger projects will issue an individual RFP for something like this. This may be an RFP. We also have 8 on-call consulting firms that we're able to negotiate contracts with directly. And we keep all them busy. So we
You
use
said 8?
firms,
8?
8 on-call firms,
Thank you. That's a good number. Thank you.
And we use more than just those 8 firms.
If you said 2, I'd have a different answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Griffin.
Absolutely.
The next project is the Old Town Hall JFK Museum improvements. There's a number of life safety improvements included in this project. We're looking for $1.8 million. It includes replacing the metal fire escape on the outside, as well as some flat roof repairs, replacing the boilers and head end mechanical equipment in the building. A future project will replace the distribution of that through unit ventilators that need to be replaced. Any questions?
All right. Back to me and back to roadway improvement projects. The next project is South Street Corridor and Pedestrian Improvements Project. This is also a request for design for $500,000. This is the full design request, not just preliminary design. This project would involve corridor improvements of South Street, Hyannis, which would include improvements to the sidewalks, a new shared use path for the length of South Street, stormwater improvements, and roadway resurfacing. This again is a request for design. It's $500,000 request.
Would you need to take property to widen for a shared use path?
We do not know that definitively. That would be informed by the design process. However, we are optimistic that there would be a limited amount, if any, takings needed or easements needed to be acquired. And part of that is because there's actually extra wide roadway out there. So we would be, as part of this project, be kind of reducing the roadway width in order to help calm traffic as well. But by doing so, we would gain some additional space for that shared use path.
How would that be affected should the Main Street one way end?
Yeah. Yep. So the design of the Great Streets project contemplates and kind of identifies space for a future shared use path here. That design currently incorporates basically a bike lane in one direction on South Street. And what would happen with this project is that bike lane we'd put a curb in, and we would raise it and put a shared use path where that bike lane currently is, which would continue to where the sidewalk currently is. And that's why we're optimistic we have enough space to do that, really basically going to the back of the existing sidewalk on the south side, likely, of the roadway.
That makes sense.
So you're planning a single lane for cars on South Street, or still
there would
two
be,
lanes?
Yeah, no. So the Great Streets project proposes 2 lanes of traffic, one lane in each direction.
Okay. And I know there was a proposal for a rotary potentially down closer to the harbor. Does
Correct.
this incorporate that at all?
It does, yes. Yep. So the roundabout design that's incorporated into the Great Streets project actually includes shared use paths through it. So we would connect to those. So we're kind of already contemplating the fact that this would be a priority project in the future when we're able to advance that.
Okay.
Good. The next project is improvements to the Hyannis Armory. This is a historically significant landmark in Hyannis. About 5 years ago, the town council appropriated funding for design for improvements to this building, as well as asbestos abatement. That's been completed. Last year, town council approved funding through the Community Preservation Fund of $2.9 million for exterior restoration of the building. At that time, the Community Preservation Committee expressed a desire to continue contributing to the project. This year's ask is for $4.2 million. It begins bringing the interior of the building back to life. Utilities need to be replaced from the street. It includes installing plumbing and a public restroom, as well as putting the head end heating units into the facility and upgrading the electrical. There's about $3 million of this project that is fundable through CPC. Questions?
I've never
Did you
been
use
in.
that building for anything?
Right now, the building is being used for storage. Previous to this, when there was an old large heating unit in the main room, it was used for various things by the rec department.
Is there a plan to utilize it again after the improvements, or?
Yeah. So what this is well, a number of years ago, this is probably going back 10 years now, DPW was asked to take a look at the building to see what could be done with it. There was a number of interested parties over the years. We're talking about museums and art centers and different things. All those were dropped out because of the condition of the building. We really wanted to put the money that's going to take to put the money in the building. We had come up with expanding the town hall administrative campus to the facility. We have a plan that we have construction drawings for to put town manager, town council chambers, a new hearing room for 300 people into that building across the street, improve the parking lot. And what that does is, we've been talking about improving security in town hall. This is a pretty secure building with the improvements we're going to make to it. And it would be a great place for them to be and open up space in town hall, which we need for offices, personnel.
Okay, great.
That's not the official plan by town council, but that's what we've been moving towards. That's the plan that's been getting any traction at all. So we've been incrementally making improvements to the building to make it more sellable, as well as looking at this as an end product.
Okay.
So that concludes the presentation of our priority projects. But if you have any further questions or on anything else, we'd be happy to try to answer. Otherwise, that would conclude our presentation.
I appreciate that, Dan. Anyone else have any questions on anything we talked about?
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
All right. I'd say
Okay.
we're all set.
Thanks very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you all.
You
Take
too.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right. So on to the town fiscal policy review.
Before we move on to that, Chris, I just want to, let's see, we have the CIP subcommittee is Remus, Jeremy, and Jim, with yourself serving on both CIP and OP budget, Chris. And I'm going to be sending out a meeting invitation for next Tuesday at 4 p.m. for the CIP subcommittee's first meeting.
Okay.
Well, I'll schedule those for every week from here and right through the end until we submit the CIP report, and we can meet more frequently if needed as well. But those will have to be public meetings, just like this, and we'll be getting those meetings set up this week. Okay, I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So on to the fiscal policy update.
Sorry, Mark, just quickly, are those meetings in person or are they online?
They're going to be online, the same format as we have here.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think that'd be the easiest way for everybody to meet. So moving on to the fiscal policy discussion, as most of you know, some of your newer members, haven't had the opportunity to see the model yet that we developed for measuring the financial stability of the implementation for the CWMP program. We've had the committee review the model that we've developed previously. We've had you report on that model back to the town council. And our intention was to continue to have or continue to review updates to that model as significant events occur. So we had some significant events occur, the most recent one being the 5-year capital improvement plan that was submitted by DPW recently to fund the FY27 through FY31 CWMP project requests. We also have, as Town Engineer Bowden mentioned tonight, we expect to have, we expect the DEP will issue their intended use plan for projects that will be funded through the State Revolving Loan Fund in the next couple of weeks. And we have one large project that we submitted that's part of our FY27 request, which is that Long Pond area sewer expansion. So with that new information being available, we updated the financial tool that we use to measure the CWMP's financial financial situation, and we presented this to the town council last Thursday night. And as I've mentioned previously, we have created resources that will allow us to fund all of the projects for the CWMP that have been appropriated to date, which are well more than $200 million. And the FY27 projects that we anticipate bringing forward in our next capital plan. The problem that we run into is a lack of resources for the FY28 and later years. And so we need to find additional resources to continue with the schedule of implementation Public Works has laid out in that comprehensive wastewater management plan. So there's a number of different options we could use to raise those resources. One being a debt exclusion vote to authorize the new debt service that would be, or authorize the debt service on the loans that we would take out to be exempt from the limitations of Proposition 2.5, so that we can add those payments to the tax levy and affect, a tax levy increase. That would be one option. Another option would be what's called bringing to the voters the creation of a water infrastructure investment fund, which operates similar to the Community Preservation Act, where a 3% surcharge is added onto all real estate tax bills. And that would provide resources necessary to continue with the implementation for the next few years of the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. Another option would be to, instead of raising new revenue through those additional taxing alternatives, would be to increase the resources allocated to the capital program by cutting operating budgets. But the reductions that would be necessary to allocate more of our property tax levy to continue with the implementation of CWMP would be pretty catastrophic to the operations of our budget, because we're already balancing the general fund operating budget with $8.4 million of reserves. And when all the debt services issued on the projects projected for the next 5 years, we're looking at another $9.5 million of new debt service. So we're in excess of $18 million now of reductions that would have to be made to the operating side of the budget to redirect those existing resources over to the capital side of the budget. So my recommendation to the town council was to raise revenue through either one of those additional taxing options, which would be a debt exclusion or the creation of a water infrastructure investment fund. Both of those options would require voter approval. And I provided some suggested next steps that we could follow, along with some timelines that are important to adhere to. And that's all in a presentation that I provided you all. And I also recommended to them that we'd have this committee review our recommendation, the town manager and I, and report back to the town council as to that recommendation sometime in around the month of July of 2026, knowing that you're busy right now with the review of the FY27 capital and operating budgets. We need some time. We'd like to go take a deep dive into that funding model that most of you have seen before, review that with you again, make sure that the assumptions are sound. I'll share your previous report that you sent to the town council during your last review, so you can all take a look at that. I think that would be a good starting point, looking at what you previously reported on in terms of in regards to that funding model. And I think we have another older CFAC report that you issued. I don't think it was probably before most of you served on the committee, but there was another report about funding the comprehensive wastewater management plan that a previous makeup of the comprehensive financial advisory committee sent to the town council, and I'll provide you a copy of that as well so you can review that. So yeah, that's I just wanted to give you an overview of what that presentation that I shared with you included. Again, I'll provide you those previous reports, and then I think we can schedule a meeting to take a deeper dive into that funding model that we created. It's pretty basic. It's an Excel spreadsheet with multiple worksheet tabs that allows you to manipulate revenue assumptions, expenditure assumptions, choose between alternatives for funding, whether it's a water infrastructure investment fund or a debt exclusion override. Limitations to Excel and my own Excel skill set limits to what we can actually, we can do with that funding model. But I think it's pretty sound, and I think the previous committee felt it was pretty sound. So we'll take another look at that, and if you're agreeable to moving forward in that direction, I didn't want to put you in a position of thinking that that anybody's looking for you to make fiscal policy decisions. That's not what I think we're all looking for. We're just looking for you to review recommendations on what those fiscal policy decisions that are being presented, what your opinion is on those recommendations. That's it. Not to set it. That fiscal policy resides with the town council.
So, Mark, when I was looking at that presentation, I just did a quick skim through when you sent it. My read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're just looking at it, just kind of presented options. You have not come to a conclusion on which one you would particularly want to recommend or pursue, correct?
Yes, I put it. There's a slide in there that shows the different options that are available. Personally, if I'm asked, which option I think is the best option for us to go forward with, would be the debt exclusion. If you were to ask me which one it would be, that's what I would tell you would be the debt exclusion option.
But in terms of, so I'm not surprised, frankly, and I can see why you would get there. But in terms of process, is this something that that at the end of the day you will be recommending, or are you going to be presenting something? You're presenting the options to town council, and they have to make that decision on their own.
They ultimately have to make that decision.
Right.
I believe I said last Thursday night that, in my opinion, that was our best option.
Okay, got it.
But I showed them what the different options were, expressed my position, but ultimately they'll have to decide which option to go, because I don't set the fiscal policy. I can only recommend, and that's my recommendation, is to
Yeah.
is to choose that option.
But what I was trying to understand was part of the process is you're making a recommendation. They will then chew on that recommendation and compare it to other options and make a decision, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
If we're reporting back by July of this year, if the council wanted to do a whiff or a debt exclusion, would they have time to get it on the ballot in November this year? Or would it have to
Yeah.
go next year?
So, one of the slides, Chris lays out the options that they could choose for us for an election. They could put it on this, I believe it's a state election this fall, or they could put it on the following November 2020. I think it's 2027 ballot which is a townwide election, or they could choose to schedule a special election and put it on a special election.
Right. I just am wondering what the deadline is for this November's election.
Yeah, so if it's a state election, the town clerk has to notify the Secretary of State, I believe, within 60 days, at least 60 days prior to the state election. And that one of the next steps that I recommended was that in February, next month, we follow up with a workshop having our legal department and our town clerk discuss that very point. One of that would be part of the discussion would be to have them discuss, what are the deadlines that need to be adhered to in order to get it on a state election ballot, or what's the deadline needed to get it on a town election ballot, or the deadline for a special election. I think the nature, the subject matter that we're talking about here probably deserves its own special election. I don't think you'd want the state election could be a problem because there's so many ballot initiatives that come along with a state election typically that the ballot could end up being numerous pages long, and that could be problematic for a lot of people. And I think the timing of the November election for townwide election is kind of a little late. I think maybe or just problematic from a standpoint that becomes the election issue, and not the counselors themselves, but the ballot initiative becomes the election issue. I think that the subject matter probably requires its own special election like we had with the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School debt exclusion override that took place in September of 2019, I believe. That was its own special election. It was the only ballot question on the ballot, and that might be the best way to go. Would be to have, this topic on its own special election. But again, that's not my decision. But you may want to make it, highlight it as an important public fiscal policy decision that needs to be made, and maybe have it on its own unique or special election ballot.
This is just a simple majority?
Yes, it's a majority vote of the community or the voters to pass it, but I believe it's a 2/3 vote of the town council that actually put it on a ballot. But it's a majority of the voters to pass it. Again, that'll be part of that February workshop. Those types of questions, I think, are need to be reviewed. We did it about a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago with the previous town council. We had a workshop on ballot initiatives, and we talked about the timing, what the ballot question would look like, what town staff and elected officials can and cannot do during an election campaign when it comes to ballot initiatives. Staff and CFAC, we're all very limited as to what we can do in our capacity as a CFAC member or a staff person when it comes to a ballot initiative. We can't go out campaign for or against ballot initiatives as a town employer, as a CFAC board member, but you could theoretically on your own accord, not representing yourself as a CFAC member, but as a member of our community, you're for or against this ballot question. But you'd have to make that clear. And that's all part of what legal would discuss in this workshop, would make sure that everybody understands those types of limitations, because before we go down the road of deciding that's the funding mechanism for the continuation of implementing this program, I think everybody needs to understand what's involved in that process.
When I was asking majority, I'm assuming you meant majority of people voting, not registered voters.
It's registered voters. Only registered voters could vote.
No. For it to pass, it's 50% of those who are voting, not
voting.
Those,
that's right. Yeah, those are voting. So if only
those who are
500
registered
people show up at the polls, 251 people could pass it. Yeah.
Mark, the limitation of the whiff would prevent funding. There's another, I think you wrote 325 million of capital projects. The whiff would simply fund CWMP, whereas a debt exclusion could look at some of these other projects and probably would.
Okay. Well, a whiff, first of all, a whiff could fund. There's three types of projects that are eligible for funding under a whiff if we were to pass a whiff. You could do your sewer expansions, you could do drinking water improvements, you could do stormwater improvements. And so if we go down the road of seeking the creation of a water infrastructure investment fund, we could have competing interests. And we really need all of that dedicated to the expansion of the comprehensive wastewater management plan, because it provides us just enough funding to implement that program without any additional requests coming from drinking water projects and stormwater projects. So that's one of the challenges with a whiff, is you've got competing interests, like you do with the Community Preservation Act, with historic programs, recreation and open space, and community housing. So you got multiple competing interests. So your resources could potentially get spread out amongst those competing interests and now allow us to fully implement the next 5 year projects of comprehensive wastewater management plan. And it's only a 5-year solution. We're only looking at this program in 5-year increments to keep it manageable, because what's going to happen in years 6 through 10, it's very hard to predict that. And so we've broken it down to 5-year increments, and we try to analyze this program from a financial as well as a technical perspective, from what DPW does, in 5-year increments. And so either one of these solutions, the WIF would only provide us funding for the next 5 years if there's no other competing interests trying to get that money. And the debt exclusion would only provide us a solution for the next 5 years. And so then at that point, when we get to, years 6 through 10, when DPW comes up with the next group of projects that need to be implemented, if we're still going down this road to meet our total maximum daily load reduction requirements, we may be looking at another debt exclusion, or a WIF at that point in time, if the debt exclusion is the choice option this time. So yeah, this is, to be clear, this would just be a 5-year solution until we figure out what the next 5 years, how we're going to fund that. But the program could completely change in 5 years. Maybe there's new technology that gets developed that allows you to implement on-site solutions that currently don't exist. These innovative alternative systems that exist today do not reduce nitrogen to the levels needed in many of our estuaries, and so they're not a viable solution. But maybe 5 years from now they will be, and we can start doing on-site solutions as opposed to continuing building out the public sewer infrastructure.
But I guess,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just one follow-up. But I guess the challenge is we had that presentation last year in the workshop with school committee of they're saying, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars needed for the schools. So I think our feedback was, please talk to each other, because that for me is a fear that if we have 325 million of other projects, there's going to be, particularly with schools, that need. And can you combine those projects when you look at funding that debt exclusion is going to be attacking, or
Yeah.
are those two separate things? And is that like, we can talk about that later, as when we kind of talk to town council?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Jeremy, because one of the questions I was asked at the end of the conversation, and it was by a former member of CFAC, Tom Keene, knowing that the school department has a large list of capital needs, could we have CFAC look at, a funding solution similar to what you're presenting here for the school department's needs? And I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. But I don't think we'd want to put them on the same with the same question. We can put them on the same ballot, but probably separate questions because they're totally independent of one another. School capital needs, public sewer infrastructure development or build out. So yeah, you could. So I think the other thing that we've got to look at is a long-term solution for the school needs from the capital side, and maybe it's a debt exclusion for that as well, particularly for the large anticipated projects coming up.
I want to
Okay, thank
also
you.
echo what Jeremy's concern is. I just think that without addressing or taking into account the capital requirements for our schools, that is going down a very dark alley. Without proper schools and strong education as a pull to the community, I think is really could have devastating potentials here, because people come to communities that move in. If you're young parents, you come because of the school systems. And if I just was in Saturday at a basketball game, the gym is in tough shape, just as we've been told. It's not in good shape. So, I mean, I'm all in favor of making sure the school gets their fair share and whatever it is we're talking about here in the future. I know the discussion is CWMP, but I'm equally as concerned about our school capital budget requirements.
Without clean water, though, there won't be a need for schools because it will be a sand peninsula with no people. And so that one does come before the other, but water is probably the likely case.
Well,
But
for the purposes of this report, are we focusing strictly on CWMP, Mark, or do we want to incorporate the school as well?
Yeah, I think we're going to want to incorporate the schools as well, just based on that request from Councilor Keene. But at our next leadership meeting with leadership, I'll ask for clarification on that, if they would like you all to report back on both the financial policy on funding the CWMP as well as the school capital.
Okay.
But I got the impression, I mean, from that request, but that was one counselor. I don't want to send this committee down the road of doing an analysis based on the request of one counselor.
Right. That would
if
come
we
from
go down
leadership.
that road, you're gonna be inundated with work.
Well, I don't know what Betty's opinion is. She's here listening as well. She can certainly voice an opinion. But
so
anyway, yeah, if you can get clarification on that, I think I'll be happy to write a report for July, once we finish our annual work here, unless any committee members object to that.
I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I'll chime in a little bit. It's a good discussion. I think the water, if you will, the CWMP and the schools are kind of, right up there together. I think it would be nice to look at them because, we've heard different things from the school committee about this new school. Do we need a new school? What if we do to maintain? So, but it's probably up there, neck and neck. So I think it would be wise to look at these together.
Okay, thank you.
So at our next meeting, I do have a request out for the next meeting on January, 2 weeks from today, January 26th, to have the school department come and present their capital request for the next fiscal year. Perhaps if council leadership provides me the instructions to go forward with combining the schools in this analysis, we can then have that begin that conversation with the school superintendent and her team about putting together, a realistic, comprehensive list of what their capital needs are for the next 5 years that exceed maybe a certain dollar threshold, because these big ticket items we can't fund through existing resources. We have limited resources available to fund our ongoing capital needs. Beside the CWMP, we have a capital trust fund that allows us, the analysis that we've done on an annual basis show that we can fund about $15 million in new borrowing authorizations over the next 5 years before that program is saturated with debt service, and we'd have to wait a few years for some of those bonds to retire before we can start issuing new borrowing authorizations. But $15 million a year, that's one school project potentially. You heard from DPW tonight. There's a lot of projects on their list too, for roads and sidewalks and buildings and so forth. So there's so maybe perhaps looking at the schools separately, looking at their big ticket items and coming up with a strategy to finance roofs, HVA system overhauls, a new building, if they're really looking at a new building. I don't think there's been a real in-depth analysis on that done. So at least I'm not aware of one. But I am aware of some large HVAC projects and large roof projects. And the two roof projects that I'm aware of we're pursuing Massachusetts School Building Authority grant funding for those projects. We have been accepted into their accelerated repair program. We're going through that process. So there's a potential that program could fund up to 40% of those project costs, which would reduce the borrowing that we would need to do at a local level. But there's not the Mass School Building Authority has a limited amount of funding as well. So we can't count on them to fund all of our major school projects. And they're limited. The accelerated repair program is limited to the types of projects that you can do. They generally participate in new construction and some repairs or improvements like roofs and existing facilities. That's it.
So, Mark, on the WIF, this surcharge is time bound by regulation or time bound by how we would propose to implement it?
So it's time bound. It's time bound by law. So state law. Yeah. If the community were to approve the creation of this fund and assess the maximum surcharge, which is 3%, it can do up to 3%, like the CPA. That would be in place forever until you take it back to the voters, asking them to reduce or eliminate it. But if you have outstanding debt service that you continue to make payments on, you can't go back to the voters and ask them to do away with it, because you have bond covenants that you have to honor.
Right.
Until the bonds are all paid off. Like right now, our Community Preservation Act, we don't have any more debt service. Currently, we've made our last debt service payments for all the land acquisitions that we've done 2 decades ago. And so theoretically, we could go back to the voters and ask them to reduce or eliminate that surcharge. But that surcharge has a whole bunch of advocates out in the community that support it. Your open space, your recreation, your historic preservation, your community housing advocates. And so, if the council were to try to attempt to, put something on the ballot asking people to eliminate that surcharge, I think it would be met with a lot of resistance from, you know, those interested groups that support those types of programs. And the WIF could be the same way. You know, it could go out forever. Where a debt exclusion has a limited time frame. You know, your bonds are paid off, you're done. It goes, you know, the tax levy does not get any additional amount added to it once they're paid off. You got to go back to the voters and ask for a new debt exclusion. And the way the debt exclusion would be structured is, as we issue the loans, there's a gradual increase in the tax levy, as I illustrated in the presentation, because you're not taking all the loans out at once. You're gradually taking them out. And you could offset some of that gradual increase in the tax bills as a result of the debt exclusion through some of the tools available that we have, like shifting, you know, some of the existing tax levy from the residential class to the CIP class, continuing to implement the residential exemption, perhaps by a percentage point a year. But, you know, we only have 5% left before we're at our cap there, our current cap. So there's some mitigation tools there. And that mitigation could be applied either towards a WIF or a debt exclusion. But I like the debt exclusion option just because it comes on gradually and it doesn't all come on at once. Where a WIF, first year it's approved, you know, you immediately have 3% additional surcharge on your tax bill. And so that could be, you know, you may want to gradually increase that impact and not put it all on there at once.
But you can structure the WIF that way too, presumably.
It depends on what the percentage is. I mean, if you go to the voters and you say, you know, you want a 3% surcharge, okay, next year you're going to get an additional 3% surcharge on your tax bill all at once.
But could you structure it such that you say year one, 1%, year two, 1.5%, year three, 2.5%, and kind of a gradual increase, or it's a flat?
Unfortunately, they don't allow you to structure the vote that way.
Okay.
I'll reread that. I'll send you the informational guideline release on a water infrastructure investment fund, so you'll know more about it. But that's the way I read it. You know, we can't structure it that way, but certainly, please review it and let me know what you think. And of course, our legal department would ultimately probably provide us the guidance on that. So
great.
Just so
so the funding model I'm not familiar with, right? That would be great for me to see, as well as the definitely the most recent CFAC report, and if you have the original, that would be valuable to read.
Just for my clarity,
everybody has Excel. Do you all have Excel on your personal computers? Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll send the funding model in the Excel format file for you to take a look at. And you know, you can play around, manipulate the assumptions, and see what happens. But I should walk you through those so you understand how the model works, because sometimes if you do things in an incorrect order, you may get results that aren't accurate. So
just for my clarity on something you said, Mark, about the Community Preservation Act. So there's no more debt service associated with that. But
that's right.
The town's still collecting.
Yeah, we're still collecting the 3% every single year. I think we have one more loan payment that we're making this year, maybe one more next year for like $23,000. You know, but we're taking in $5 million a year in Community Preservation Act surcharges. So
okay, and that goes into like a segregated account. Or
it's a special revenue fund. We have to keep it separate from all other funds. We have to account for it separately. We have to report to the state on it every year. So it's all managed through a separate set of accounts on the general ledger.
And there's a small group searching for things to buy and spend money on.
Yeah, you know, we were always asked for conservation restrictions, right? Land acquisitions. There's Barnstable Land Trust is still very active around the Cape, Barnstable especially. Looking. I mean, the next thing is what you have. There might be looking at Anthony's Comiquid Inn. You know, remember that large tract of land had multiple buildings on it. They were burned down. So now it's vacant and it sits on the border of Yarmouth, Barnstable. It's in both towns actually. So, I would imagine there's an effort going on between the community preservation folks in Yarmouth and Barnstable to take a look at acquiring that to prevent it from being developed. Now that it's vacant. It's worth a lot more now that it's vacant than when it had dilapidated buildings on
The
it.
demo was done, yeah.
Has there been any move to use, certainly acquiring land was in the best interest of the community to prevent development in sensitive areas? I think when it comes from a land management perspective, then how
Yeah.
do you manage that land? I mean, forest fire is a huge risk, especially along the highway moraine. We set it aside, and now what? And I think that I don't know if that's something groups have been looking at, but I'd write a lot on forest fires, and we just were like, look, we did it. We saved the land. But there hasn't been now a next.
Yeah.
It was managed for 10,000 years by the Wampanoag people. Now we're just like, we don't touch it, right? That's good. And that's not effective management. So I wonder how we can then use funds, which the community clearly says, like, we want to maintain these areas of public interest and ecological importance, of using it instead of just acquiring, that we could use it for managing.
Community preservation funds can't be used for maintenance. That's the thing.
Strictly for acquiring.
Yeah, we can
property.
acquire lands. We can make improvements to recreation land. Like we have ball fields and playgrounds that we want to improve. We can certainly use community preservation funds for those. But we can't maintain the ball fields and playgrounds and open space with community preservation funds. Maintenance is a prohibition for using those funds for that type of maintenance activity.
But I imagine when they created the idea of it, the priority was acquisitions. Whereas it seems like there maybe needs to be an update to that it's a little nearsighted of saying we acquired it, and then what did you expect them to do with it? Where was that money going to come from? And I think that's the challenge.
It's a good point. I mean, it ends up being a huge maintenance for a burden for us. Look at we got the large Danforth property out there in Marston's Mills that was acquired through the former land bank, which is now the Community Preservation Act. But we have a tenant out there that maintains that property for us. That's a unique situation. But there are other properties out there that we've acquired, that we don't necessarily have the maintenance to, do comprehensive routine trail maintenance on these things. And you depend upon volunteers to help with that kind of stuff.
So like those houses, is it Ocean Street that have those murals from WPA that isn't eligible then for CPC funding because it would be considered maintenance?
Under what program would the murals be considered? Not historic preservation?
I mean, I guess, yeah, it would be historic preservation.
No, I mean, historic preservation, you got to be on a state or federal historic list of properties. For some of that stuff. Yeah.
But it seems like the last 2 years in the CIP, there's all these properties we have that, the carriage house to the hearse.
Yep. And I mean, those types of properties, the old jailhouse, Coast Guard Museum, those are historic properties. They're on a historic preservation list. We can use historic preservation or CPA funds to make improvements to those properties, but we can't use CPA funds to maintain those properties.
Interesting.
Yeah. Maintenance is on the town. Or the tenant that you enter into an agreement with to lease the space out. We can write the lease agreements to say, hey, you got to do the daily maintenance. That's up to you. We're the owner of the property, though. But we'll do the capital improvements. We'll fix the roof when it needs to be replaced and so forth.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. I guess we'll move on. correspondence from committee members? Anyone have anything they want to bring up separate from what we've discussed?
I just had one, on the sheet we discussed the last couple of weeks ago. I had one other correction to it. When I finish that, I'll pass that back through, on the just the analysis of the splits. I'm just working on. I just didn't get it done, but I will and share it back in the next meeting.
Great. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you leading the ship at the last meeting, Jim, too. I'm sorry I missed that. Any other communications, Mark or Betty or Gareth?
I don't have any, Chris. Gareth, I don't know. Oh, Gareth did send out the this evening as we were meeting the enterprise
Thank
fund
you.
list and
Saw that.
CWP list.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. And can we get a roll call, Jeremy?
Chris Lauzon,
Yes.
Remus Pastorius,
Yes.
Jim Sproul,
yes.
Frank Ward,
Yes.
Lillian Wu,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
All right. Great. Thank you guys very much.